Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could join us once again today for another hour of New York Giants talk. I'm Paul Dottino. He's Matt Citak. Our number is 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. On Twitter, it's hashtag Giants Chat. And remember, if you don't catch the program live and you want to catch it later on the archive or on demand, you can go to the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. As always, we're coming to you from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Today's program, Matt, I thought we would go to an NFL.com story that came out I think, in the last 36 hours. What they were asking was, for each of the team's day 3 picks that has the best chance to crack the starting lineup.
Yep, I saw that one.
Now, I will tell you, we have a favorite day 3 pick. I mean, it was the 4th rounder who's the beginning of day 3, and Cam Scatterbo, the running back out of Arizona State. We love that guy. I think everybody on the broadcast crew is excited about him. So are all you guys out there who are watching the program. I don't know that he's going to be a starter. So this is where the wording comes in. Semantics. He's going to get time in the backfield. He will play.
Yes, for sure.
But Tyrone Tracy's the starter until otherwise determined.
Agreed.
Okay.
And I think they are very different style of running backs, but one attribute that they do share is they are both very good pass catchers.
No question.
Which means if either one of them is on the field, there's a threat of catching the ball out of the backfield, which you can't say that about, every RB duo that's across the NFL.
There could even be a package where both of them are on the field together.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Okay. So with the trickery involving the words in terms of starter, I will ask you, which of the third-day picks is going to be the first one to start a game during this regular season? Now, that's a little different, right? Because starter indicates the guy was awarded the number 1 job, and now he is the starter. I think we're going to change this a little bit, because as I was sitting at lunch, I'm thinking to myself, there's no challenge to that question. The challenge is, which of those day 3 picks is going to be the first one to start a regular season game for the Giants? How about that?
Okay. I am still sticking with Cam Scatterbo.
Okay.
To be honest. I feel like, there's 4 day 3 picks. The 2 7th rounders, I would consider long shots at this point. Like, I guess maybe, maybe there's a chance Thomas Fidone performs so well over the next couple of months leading into the season that he cracks the starting lineup. I can't say I would be utterly shocked, but I would think him and Corey Black are certainly the long shots in this discussion.
Right.
And then, so it comes down to Scatterbo versus Marcus Bowe. They're both not at the top of the depth chart at the moment. Obviously, they were not drafted to be at the top of the depth chart. But Marcus Bowe has more competition.
He does.
However, now I'm convincing myself to maybe switch.
That's why I don't think this was as easy as you thought it was.
Marcus Bowe did say that he's been training at all 5 positions. Which
correct.
I don't think he's going to be the number 1 backup at all 5 positions, but he could head into the season as the number 1 backup at a specific position on the line.
He could.
And then if that starter gets hurt, then he just goes right in. And obviously the same argument can be said for Cam Scatterbo, where if Tyrone Tracy were to get hurt, I think he would, depending on what part of the season we're at, he could then go into the starting lineup. Obviously, Devin Singletary is still in the running back room. Veteran, they might lean a little bit more towards him than the rookie. I'm changing my answer. I'm going with Marcus Bowe.
Okay. And that's where I was going to go. It took you a while to get back to where I was, but that's where I was, actually, because I figure if Tyrone Tracy gets hurt, Singletary will then be the starter, and Scatterbo will remain 1A. I don't think they would necessarily start him.
I think the only way that wouldn't happen is if we're, maybe a month into the season, similar to last year when Tyrone Tracy went in, when Devin Singletary got hurt. I want to say it was week 4 or 5 was his
It was about a month in. 5, might have been 5 or 6.
I guess there is a chance where if Cam Scatterbo shows enough during preseason and the beginning parts of the season where he shows he can handle, a starting workload, and then something were to happen to Tyrone Tracy, then I could see him leapfrogging Singletary. But
see, I think the trust factor between Singletary and Dable
for sure
gives him the best shot to be that guy.
Definitely gives him the edge. I'm just trying to think of in what situation could Cam Scatterbo possibly leapfrog Devin Singletary.
Fair enough.
That would be the only one. But I don't think it's at this point. I don't see that as too likely, which is why I gotta agree with you on Marcus Bowe.
And I'm not exactly all in that Bowe was going to get that start, but because of what we just discussed, I just think the running back room, the way it's configured, and Singletary's experience, his professionalism, I just think that they would go to him first. The thing about the offensive line is that there is still a lot of questions there. There are bodies. You're absolutely right. There are bodies, and there's a lot of competition at guard. But if Bowe is going to cross-train at all the spots, it's entirely possible that if he is a quick riser during the course of training camp, well, you know what? Maybe there is one of those spots where they might turn to him first. It is possible. I think it's unlikely, but I do think it's possible. And because there is not necessarily a Singletary type veteran who I would say supersedes him, I'm going with Bowe.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, look, as you said, there are just a lot of guys in that offensive line room right now.
There are.
And we don't know how exactly it's going to play out. Who even is going to actually make the team of all these guys? Because not everyone's obviously going to be able to make the final roster.
And don't forget this, right? I just said to start a regular season game, maybe Tracy's healthy the whole season. And so he holds the job the whole way, right?
Let's hope.
And maybe the offensive line, for whatever reason, is plays well, or maybe guys don't get hurt, and all of a sudden it's the last couple of games of the regular season, and the Giants decide they just want to take a look at Bowe and see how much he could give them and give him a shot at playing a game. Look, this has happened before where the last game or two, they want to get a good look at somebody. Well, maybe that's the circumstance that forces Bowe into getting a chance. That could happen too.
Yeah, it certainly could. I mean, I think the biggest question that we just don't know the answer to right now is we don't even know what position on the offensive line that the Giants really are thinking for Marcus Bowe. Like he said, he's been training at all five. Obviously, going into the OTAs in a couple of weeks, certainly training camp in a few months, they're going to have him primarily playing a certain position. They're not going to have him every other play switching positions.
Absolutely.
Obviously, that would just not be beneficial for his growth. So I think once we get a little bit more clarity on which position they, at least to begin his career, the Giants are going to have him focus on, will help give us shed a little bit of light on the situation. Mm-hmm. Because we mentioned there are a lot of guys, especially on the inside right now. Not as many guys at the two tackle spots. You have your two starters in Andrew Thomas and Jermaine Illuminor.
And there's Forsythe and Hudson.
You signed Hudson to a, more than just your stereotypical vet minimum deal. You brought Stone Forsythe in. Those are really your four tackles right there. Unless I don't think I'm forgetting anyone. I think because there's Evan Neal, of course.
Like I said, we don't know about Neal. Yeah, we don't honestly know how he cross-trains, where they're going to want to put him.
Obviously there's been all the buzz, and Joe has spoken several times about Evan potentially moving inside. We still don't know that for sure. But assuming he does eventually move inside, you kind of got four tackles. Mm-hmm. So if Marcus Bowe, if they want to train him at tackle to at least start his career, he could potentially end up being, the primary backup tackle at one of the two spots. And then if the starter gets hurt, he could get thrown in. So it would definitely help if once we get a little bit of clarity on where they primarily want to focus his training to begin his career, which position. But yeah, for now, I was go with Marcus
Now,
Bowe.
why was this an interesting question for me? Well, NFL.com posed this very question, as I said, within the last day and a half. Jaden Blue, the running back for the Dallas Cowboys coming out of Texas, was their number one pick as a day 3 draft choice who was going to start for his team. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I just want to touch on the NFC East here for a second, folks, because let's face it, the Dallas running game was pretty much in shambles going into the offseason.
Yeah, they completely revamped their running back room with Blue. Then they also signed Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams. They have 3 completely new guys at the top of their depth chart from last year. I think Deuce Vaughn might be the only running back that's even still on the roster.
I think you're
last
right.
Year.
I think you're right. By the way, yes, a Giants guy was next among the NFC East potential selections, and that was number 5, Cam Scatterbo. But here's what may surprise you, folks. NFL.com actually thinking along our lines. Marcus Bowe was actually the number 7 player who they considered as a day 3 pick and possible starter this season. So they kind of understood the dynamic that we were talking about. Otherwise, Bowe would not be this high on the list.
Yeah, definitely. My personal opinion, I think the reason Scatterbo is ahead of Bowe on the list is because it seems like Scatterbo just basically
he's got a lot of pub right now, to be honest.
Given his position, it's a lot easier to, go from college football playing running back position to the NFL. It's a little bit harder on the offensive line. So, and I mean, again, Scatterbo was one of the best players in all college football last year.
Sure was.
Going into the draft, people thought it's not going to take this guy long to figure out how to, find success in the NFL. So it doesn't surprise me that they have Scatterbo a little bit higher than Bowe. But yeah, as we said, Tyrone Tracy right now is the starting running back until we hear otherwise.
The other NFC East player who made the list was Cameron Williams, the Texas offensive tackle taken by the Philadelphia Eagles. He came in at player number 16. That was the only other player from the NFC East who made the NFL.com list. They only took 16 players total on the list that they came up with.
So, doesn't surprise me too much that the reigning Super Bowl champions don't have too many day 3 picks that could be starting soon. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the reigning Super Bowl champions.
Washington did not have anybody. Now, they only had 5 picks. Yeah. Remember, they had traded and made moves and gotten a couple of veterans with Deebo Samuel. They also brought in the cornerback. Lattimore, yeah, Marcus Lattimore. So they didn't have a full complement of picks. So it stood to reason that, people were not going to be as impressed with the guys that they took. But Washington did not place a player on NFL.com's list, again, of the day 3 draft choices who might be able to start for their respective teams. All right, before we get to the phones, and we're going to get to you in just a second at 201-939-4513, there is news coming out of the division, Matt.
Yes.
And we would be remiss if we had not addressed it, because if you're in the NFC East, you know that there are some very potent passing threats or wide receiver threats, receiving targets, phrase it however you like. The ball can fly through the air in this division. There are some guys who can make big plays. And earlier this morning, apparently the Dallas Cowboys added one such player. George Pickens comes over in a trade from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this really fills a gaping hole on that Cowboys roster. People thought going into the draft that they desperately needed somebody to pair with C.D. Lamb because their depth chart was rather unimpressive. Well, they got a guy today.
Yeah, well, first from Pittsburgh's perspective, it feels like the writing's been on the wall that Pickens was going to get moved at some point, for a while now. Like, I don't think anyone was necessarily surprised when this news came out that the Steelers were trading him.
He has a habit of ruffling feathers.
Yes, that's putting it one way. I understand Pittsburgh's side of you. They got a 3rd-round pick, I believe, and then some late
a 5 the next
swap.
A 5 and 27.
And then they gave the Cowboys
a pick this year too.
Pick swap
coming up.
Basically a 3rd-round pick and then some late swap. So it makes sense for them, although, to be honest, they don't. I mean, I know they traded for DK Metcalf earlier this offseason, but outside of DK Metcalf, who else did they really have in that offense? I mean, they still don't really have a starting quarterback. Obviously, there's the buzz for a while now that they might get Aaron Rodgers. But if you're Aaron Rodgers, that offense looks a lot less appealing now without George Pickens there.
It sure does.
It
sure does.
Yeah. Interesting move. I guess it was necessary for Pittsburgh to get some sort of trade value because clearly he was not a part of their long-term plans.
Well, he's in the final year of his contract.
Yeah.
And so, this is a guy who you have to kind of scratch your head and say, he hasn't been the most contented player on the roster. Do you really want to re-sign him to a big extension for some mega bucks, knowing that he does tend to rock the boat?
Yeah, so, I mean, they clearly made up their mind on that with this trade.
They pulled the plug is what they did.
Yeah, and then now moving over to the Cowboys side, as you said, makes a ton of sense for them. I mean, they needed to add a wide receiver. Jerry Jones explicitly said that they were going to add a receiver prior to the draft, and he made it the way he said it. It kind of he said it in a way where he was basically like, it's not guaranteed to come in the draft. It could be a veteran trade. I think everyone just kind of assumed that the trade would go down during the draft since it would, involve some draft assets, but they waited until after the draft. Now they have a wide receiver room that starts with CeeDee Lamb, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. No argument there. George Pickens as your number 2. That is a very interesting wide receiver duo right there.
That's a lot of talent.
It is a lot of talent. If you can rein in Pickens from the kind of non-football side of things.
Good choice of words.
Then this offense has the potential, with a healthy Dak Prescott as well, has the potential to be very good offense. I mean, those two at the top of your wide receiver depth chart, it's got to be one of the more talented wide receiver duos across the NFL. And, it makes the Giants' acquisition of Paulson Adebo look even better now because now the Giants will, have Paulson Adebo, Deontay Banks, Drew Phillips out there matching up against CeeDee Lamb, Pickens, and Jalen Tolbert, whoever it is that.
Yeah.
Tolbert will likely be the third.
I would think
there.
so.
So, yeah, I mean, look, Dallas had to make a move. There's a lot of buzz lately, and I guess it was more speculation than actual, buzz, but that they were going to have a potential reunion with Amari Cooper, who is still a free agent. They obviously opted to trade for the younger George Pickens instead. And for them, it's basically a 1-year prove-it deal. So from the Cowboys side of things, I guess they're willing to, sort of gamble and risk it and see if Pickens if they can untap, that potential of his, because he certainly has a ton of potential. And, from their side of things, if he plays well and there's no issues off the field, then they can, sign him to a long-term extension and keep him and CeeDee Lamb together for years to come. So this trade makes a ton of sense from both sides. Can understand where, each side came from, the reasoning behind it. Given some of the issues, I don't know if I personally would have wanted to give up a 3rd-round pick, but the Cowboys, I guess, are also banking that they're going to have success this year, and that's not going to be an early 3rd-round pick.
The other thing is, their money issues, their cap issues, so to speak. If they're bringing him in for a 1-year rental, that's one thing. But usually when you make a deal for a player like this, you do it with the anticipation that you're going to have a good chance to re-sign him, or at least want to re-sign him. This is a team that has had a lot of money trouble in the last couple of years because they've had big-time players making big-time bucks, including Prescott, who at some point, his cap number is going to shoot through the roof.
Yep.
And
they still haven't even signed Parsons to his extension.
Okay.
And that's coming.
And they redid Lamb this past year, and he got huge money. So, that part of it makes me scratch my head a tad because they could have had a reunion with Amari Cooper, who is a free agent and certainly available right now. And you would think at this point, again, I don't know if he wants to come into a camp now or wants to come in later on in the summer, but he's not going to get huge bucks at this stage of his career.
No, and also just this stage of the offseason. I mean, teams don't really have that much money left.
And Keenan Allen was the other receiver, right? So those were the two guys who are very accomplished in this league, who you're probably going to get I hate to use the words dirt cheap. That sounds disrespectful. But compared to their resumes, you're talking about guys who you would get at a very economic cost, very economic friendly cost. And the Cowboys decided not to do that. They're going to roll the dice on a guy who has a lot of rough spots around the edges. Let's just say that.
Yeah, but
but he's a great talent.
He's a great talent, and he's obviously a lot younger than those other two guys. He's only 24 years old. If they can kind of rein him in a bit, and he has a great season, then they're going to look like geniuses. They're going to sign him to an extension. He's going to be a part of the Cowboys for at least the foreseeable future.
Just remember, though, Jerry's always got to finagle with the cap because it's a problem for him all the time. Signing Pickens to another deal is not going to be that easy.
No, but I did see one thing today that said Pickens told the Cowboys that he does not want to sign a deal until after this upcoming season. He wants to go out and prove that he is, a top receiver.
Oh, that's fine, because Jerry always waits to the last minute to sign his guys to new deals.
That is also very true. If CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and Micah Parsons didn't get a contract ahead of time, George Pickens certainly is not going to get it one immediately after being traded to Dallas.
You talk about putting things off. Jerry Jones is the master at putting things off, and that gets him in trouble because the longer you put off deals like that, the more you wind up paying.
Yeah, I think he does it because he just likes the Cowboys being in the media attention.
Yeah, it could be that
being
too.
in the news cycle. But
we know he loves attention.
When you wait, we saw it with Dak Prescott. The Cowboys had a chance to sign him to an extension for however much money. They waited. I think 3 other quarterbacks signed new deals, each one breaking the other one's record, and then Dak wanted to beat all of their money. So if they signed him first, they would have been at the bottom of that chain instead of being at the top paying the most.
Yep. The market just continues to rise all the time for your top-notch players, and so when you wait, you pay. That's that simple.
Again, and I know I've said this several times in the last 2 years, but that's just another reason why the extension given to Dexter Lawrence 2 years ago was one of Joe Shane's most brilliant moves.
Thomas, too.
And Andrew Thomas, yeah. But just Thomas has obviously had the injury issues since signing. Dexter has been amazing, continued to play like an all-pro. And I think he's like maybe the 10th highest paid defensive tackle right now.
Is it really that low now?
He might be even lower, honestly, after this offseason's
Let's keep that down. We don't want to give anybody ideas.
And he's obviously, the way he's playing, he's at the very least a top 3 defensive tackle in the NFL right now.
All right, fans, it's time to look full steam ahead to the 2025 season. Take your fandom to the next level with an exciting home schedule on the horizon. Giants season ticket memberships are available. You can catch all the action at MetLife Stadium. You can stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game day, with exclusive member access and benefits. To learn more about a New York Giants season ticket membership, visit giants.com/tickets. We go to the telephone lines and we open things up to you guys. It's Gil in Connecticut. You are first on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hello, guys. How you doing today?
Very good to talk to you.
How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks. It's only my second time calling, so I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of the topic you guys have been talking about the last few days about position rankings.
Sure.
And I mainly wanted to focus on the wide receiver position. I know we have some depth there. One of my huge concerns is the slot. So we know we have Wan'Dale, but God forbid Wan'Dale goes down. Who's next in line for that slot position? Because I know you got Hyatt on the outside of the backup. Who do you see coming in and taking in that spot when Wan'Dale's not on the field? Because to me, that's a big area of concern.
Well, for starters, Malik showed last year that he is more than capable of lining up in the slot. So
he can play anywhere.
They could move him inside and then have 1 or 2 other guys on the outside, and that would easily make up for Wan'Dale not being on the field, for starters. But elsewhere on the depth chart, I do kind of agree. I think I said this a week or 2 ago that wide receiver would be a position I would look to add at some point before training camp, because I agree that they, beyond Wan'Dale, when it comes to the slot receiver positions, a little bit of a question mark. I think Zach Pascal also has experience.
He does.
Playing in the slot, so he's a bigger bodied slot than Wan'Dale, obviously 6'2", and Wan'Dale's 5'8". So
I think Jordan Humphrey also played some big slot too. when he was in Denver. a
Yeah,
little
so
bit.
some of the guys that they brought in this offseason, the veterans, may not be your stereotypical slot receivers, but do have experience playing in the slot.
You have to remember, one of the things that we're seeing more and more in the NFL in the last year or two, you're seeing more usage of flex tight ends playing the slot spot.
Oh, yeah.
Or for that matter, larger receivers playing a big slot. So the term slot receiver now kind of takes on three meanings. It could be a smurf, okay, or it could be a flex tight end, or it could be a jumbo receiver. I mean, they've expanded the usage of the position.
We did see Theo Johnson line up in the slot at times last year.
Sure.
I would assume in going into year 2 that he'll be utilized in the slot even more.
So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but maybe the need isn't as great as you might think because of the expansion of the position.
And there's also, we'll find out for sure, I think maybe tomorrow or Friday with, the reported signings of undrafted free agents. But just looking at the reported list, there are several receivers on that reported list, not confirming anything, but the Giants could be looking to, give some of those guys a look and
Could
see
be.
if one of them could kind of take that backup slot receiver role.
Right. I appreciate that. So I wanted to float a name out there. I mean, I can speak on him because he's officially been released. A name I really would keep an eye on as a slot receiver. He just got released for the Jags, would be maybe Gabe Davis with the Buffalo connection. Just throwing that out there. I'll take your answers off the air on that.
All right. Thanks so much for the call. 201-939-4513.
Thank you, Gil.
Davis, up and down career so far in the NFL. I think there
This
was
past season, especially.
There was more expected of him when he came into the league.
Well, not even that. I think it's more expected from him when he signed just last year with the Jaguars.
Yeah.
I mean, they signed him to a
That's
pretty
fair.
hefty contract.
Mhm.
They released him after 1 year and taking a pretty substantial dead cap hit just to get him off the roster. Which, granted, some of that has to do with obviously the emergence of Brian Thomas, drafting Travis Hunter. It's just not as much receivers, not as much of a need for them now as it was a year ago. But yes, I mean, it is an intriguing veteran that just given, what we've seen the last couple of years, given the Buffalo Bills connection there, it wouldn't shock me if the Giants, at least consider bringing him in. But
it seemed like, and maybe you'll remember differently, it seemed like almost every year, though, the Bills were trying to either get more out of him because there wasn't enough, or they were trying to replace him with somebody else. It just never seemed like, no matter what he did, that he was good enough for them.
I don't know if I necessarily agree. I mean, he came in, if you just look at his stats, the 4 years in Buffalo.
Not about stats.
7 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns,
It's not about the stats. I always remember hearing going into the draft that the Bills were looking that maybe if they could find somebody to do more of what he was supposed to do. They always seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with him. I'm not saying his stats stunk, because they didn't stink. The guy's an NFL player. But there was always something there that they wanted more from. I think the key phrase here is that I don't think he ever fulfilled his full potential as they saw it.
That I agree with.
That I think is the best way to phrase it.
That I think is fair to say. I mean, he definitely had some success with Buffalo. And I mean, no one's
He's an NFL player.
No one's gonna forget the playoff game where he just went completely bonkers with the 3 touchdowns, 200 something yards. So he definitely is a capable receiver. I do get what you're saying, that for years it kind of felt like there was all this talk where, wow, the Bills, found that number 2 receiver to play opposite Stephon Diggs. Like, they've got their receiving core locked in now. And I guess, I mean, maybe the salary cap was part of it, because the Bills last offseason were facing a lot of salary cap issues. So I don't think they could have even attempted to re-sign Gabe Davis if they wanted to. But you're right that, I guess like they could have tried signing him to like an early extension, 2 years ago. They did not. They chose not to. They kind of let him walk.
It just didn't seem like they were ever fully satisfied with what they got. That was my impression.
That's fair, but given, the fact that he got released officially today, May 7th, where it is in the offseason, the year he's coming off of, it seems like his most likely route to going back into the NFL this upcoming season would be to sign one of those cheap 1-year prove-it deals.
Right.
And if, from his point of view, if you're going to do that, wouldn't you want to maybe do it with the guy who was your offensive coordinator that led to that early career success you had? I could see his interest in potentially wanting to reunite with Brian Dable. Whether there's interest from the other side, that who knows?
Right, for sure. 201-939-4513. We go to Kyle in Boca Raton. How are you? Hello, Kyle.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
What's up, Kyle?
Thanks for taking my call. You guys
Sure.
do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to talk about a couple things quickly. Number one, injuries. I'm concerned about being healthy for start of the season and throughout the whole season. Seems like it's been a problem consistently over the past handful of years. What are your thoughts?
Well, Aaron Wellman, who is the director of the strength and conditioning programs here with the Giants, he was here under Tom Coughlin for several years, did a terrific job, then had an opportunity to go back to Indiana University, which is where he had roots, and was very happy to return there. So that's why he left the Giants. They didn't get rid of him. He left because he had a chance to go back to his roots. So he did that. Giants had some other folks in here. And then subsequent to that, there was a change made at the Indiana University football program, and they brought in a new guy. And Aaron was like, okay, now what? And it just so happens that at that particular moment, the Giants had someone who was also looking to go to another place. And so they brought Aaron Wellman back. Last season. If you looked at last season, what you would see on the Giants injury reports is that they did a much better job of lessening the soft tissue injuries. Now, they still had some injuries. There's no question about that. They still had some. There were still concussions. There were still fractures. There were still some surgeries that had to be dealt with. But the in and out, week in and week out, oh, is this guy going to be able to practice? Oh, no, is he going to be able to play in the game because there was a quad
right,
or there was a thigh or there was a hamstring or there was one of those things? Those types of things were lessened. And I believe that goes to Aaron Wellman. I'm going to give him credit for that because he had done such a good job the first time around, and I think I noticed that decrease this time around. So I'm very comfortable with him. I think the Giants are very comfortable with him. You always want to reduce your injuries. They go through studies every year, painstaking studies, trying to figure out if there's a way to do it. So I can only tell you, I think they're in the best position they can be, but Lady Luck can always deal you a bad deck.
Yeah, I mean, just go back to the 2022 season. Giants barely had like any injuries. I mean, you look and Daniel Jones was healthy the whole season. Saquon was healthy the whole season. Andrew Thomas was healthy the whole season.
The key players, they were fortunate.
The key players and guys that have had some, bad injury luck in the past all stayed healthy that season. You fast forward a year in 2023, and it was the exact opposite. Everyone got hurt. Mm-hmm. Substantial injuries to your key players torpedoed the season. Andrew Thomas getting hurt on that first drive of that Cowboys game on the blocked field goal kind of torpedoed the season from the very first drive. But right, going back to last year, it wasn't quite on the level of 2022, not even close. But the injury front was substantially better than 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrew Thomas, again, that was sort of like a freak injury, though. Was the Lisfranc, broke a bone in his foot.
I mean,
that's not something, that you can really prepare for in any sort of way.
You can't prevent that.
That just unfortunate luck. But, I mean, outside of that, I guess, like, Dexter had the torn...
Dexter had the elbow.
Elbow, yeah. Which, again, by the time that happened,
again,
the season kind of was off the rails
and
already.
there's nothing you could do to prevent that. Thibodeau's fractured wrist.
Right. Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Again, yeah, Paul just makes a great point. These were not, soft tissue injuries, stuff that can kind of be prevented. They were more kind of freak accidents. So I do think on the injury front, the Giants did take a big step in the right direction this past season from the year prior.
Okay. Thanks for the call.
One more question, guys. The soft tissue stuff is the specific things that we need to avoid because they are avoidable.
Well, those are the ones that they have tried to reduce, and I think they have. Right. So thanks for the call.
That's great to hear.
201-939-4513. Over the course of time, and this goes back to even Tom Coughlin's last year with this team, they have gone through so many different technologies and so many advancements to try to improve the health and the conditioning of the players. And I remember, Tom was always an old school guy. So when they kind of pushed some of this stuff on him, as much as maybe it made him frown a little bit, he also understood that the last 2 or 3 years that he was here, there were a lot of things that were going on. And guys were really nicked up. So, they came in with these GPS devices and these monitors. They got these little, they're like matchbooks, right? They're like matchbook size things. And these things are electronic gadgets that they stick inside the neck or the shoulder pad of the players. And so when they go out there and they have their workouts on the field, all of that information is transponded back to a laptop, which they have at practice. And it's giving them all kinds of readings, from breathing to pulse to blood pressure, oxygen levels, like all kinds of stuff. I mean, I can't even begin. It's not my expertise. So I'm not even going to try to go any further than that, other than to tell you that was a significant step forward in terms of using science and technology to try to do a better job of keeping these guys in the best condition that they possibly could be in.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that, the electronic board near the locker room that shows all the information you're saying.
Yeah.
For the life of me,
it's expensive.
I can't read that.
It might as well be a foreign language.
It basically is. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, these guys are playing football. Like, injuries are going to happen. It is unavoidable. I think we all wish more than anything that we could just completely remove injuries from the sport, but that is obviously just not even remotely realistic. They're going to happen. They're going to happen every single year to multiple guys. There's just no way to really avoid it. You can do things to somewhat better prepare and limit the soft tissue stuff, but broken bones, concussions, all that other stuff, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's just part of the game.
201-939-4513 is our phone number. We've got some phone lines open if you'd like to get in. Folks, to give you an idea of what's going on this week. Now, today's Wednesday, which means tomorrow on Thursday, the rookies will be coming in for rookie minicamp. Now, they come in, they get checked in, they go through their physicals, they sign their paperwork, which then means they are officially eligible to get on the field at practice on Friday.
Not necessarily all sign their contract.
No, they can sign waivers.
Yeah, just wanted to
which allows
make
them
that clear.
Right. If they don't sign a contract, they can sign a waiver to participate in the rookie minicamp without having actually signed a contract. Yep. So it doesn't mean the draft choices are all signed. You're right. I'm glad you said that because I don't want you folks to get the wrong impression. But that's going to be a big 48-hour period because from the time that the rookies get here and check in, you got to make sure that the guys who you really wanted to be here pass their physicals. That's number one. You feel really bad when you bring in a guy, an undrafted rookie free agent, and he can't pass his physical because then it's like, okay, you can't get on the field. Yep. We can't bring you. You're going to have to come back another time. That's always disappointing, and it does happen. Then, of course, the other thing is, as Matt alluded to a little while ago, there's a reported list out of guys who were supposed to be here, right? Well, you know what happens? Some of these guys, they don't show up. You know why? Because they had a verbal deal and they wound up agreeing to some other deal with some other team. And then guess what? You're waiting for them on Thursday and the guy doesn't come walking through the door. Turns out he's with some other team walking into their rookie mini camp. So that's why we tell people not to pay too close attention to those lists, and we won't talk about those lists because they are so unofficial.
Yeah, I mean, all I will say is wait until we put out an official list because I've seen some lists out there that may not be 100% accurate one way or the other.
And who's to say which one of those names is not right?
Exactly.
You know?
You'll find out tomorrow or Friday, whatever we announce. I don't even know when the official announcement will be coming. I'm assuming sometime before they get on the field Friday, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I saw some reports that, you know, there were at least a handful of guys that were invited to the Giants minicamp, but were also going to another team's minicamp this past weekend.
And that does happen, by the way.
Yeah. And
often. That's not a weird occurrence.
And if that those players play well in the first minicamp, they're not making it to the Giants minicamp.
They're going to sign.
I mean, and on the opposite end, I think it wasn't it Elijah Chapman last year that did go to another team's minicamp? Seattle. They did not sign him. He came here, impressed the Giants. They signed him, and sure enough, he was one of the more promising rookie defensive tackles in the league last season.
Exactly.
As an undrafted free agent. So just, you know, not that the reported lists, I'm going to say it's not like, you know, it's all baloney, but just wait until the Giants make an official announcement before getting, you know, too excited about specific players.
Now, I do know, and I'm sharing something here with you guys because I want to make sure we get this right. On Friday, that's the first day when the rookie camp begins on the field.
Yes.
Guys will actually take to practice on the field. Practice starts at 12, so we're going to have to move the show. Big Blue Kickoff Live is going to be at 2:30 Eastern Time on Friday afternoon. 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 hour, Big Blue Kickoff Live, following the first day that the rookies will get on the field. This way it gives us a chance to see these guys, get some impressions, have the quick media session, maybe get the chance to talk to a few of them as well, and then we're going to be able to bring you more on the show. It doesn't make any sense for us to do the show while the guys are on the practice field.
Yeah, I was going to say, in addition to actually being able to see that first rookie minicamp practice, we'll also hear from Coach Dable, and we'll hear from several of the draft picks. We don't know officially who yet.
Sure.
But there's a media session Friday and a media session Saturday. We'll hear from Coach Dable both days. I'm assuming the draft class will kind of get split up between who speaks Friday and who speaks Saturday, but I expect to hear from the whole class, you know, barring something crazy happening.
Yes, sure.
So it'll be good. You know, we obviously heard from Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander. They were all in the building for introductory press conferences.
Well, you know, Scadaboo's going to be much requested.
The day 3 picks, the only time we really got a chance to speak to them was when they had that very first, you know, conference call right after getting drafted. And they had like a first interview that they did with Giants.com, but we haven't gotten a chance to really talk to them, see them in person. I mean, those guys haven't been in the building. So it'll be really good to get the whole draft class in under the roof, get some eyes on them, and get this thing going.
All right, so once again, heads up, tomorrow's program on Thursday, that remains right here at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But Friday's program, because of the rookie practice, we're going to move Friday's show to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, in case you guys want to be in on the program live and you're not accessing it on demand or on the archive. We go back to the phones. Len from Columbia, Maryland is next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hi, Len.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Beautiful day, Len. Beautiful day. How are you?
Yeah, good. Everything's good here. Quick point, or maybe it's a question on Wellman. You know, when you look at his new job description, and I can't rattle it off to you, I'm just kind of doing this from memory. It looks like it's kind of a global job description in that it appears that he's more in either a management position or supervisory position of 3 or 4 others in his department, and it makes me think that maybe he's doing more of the planning and organizing, and then he's got 3 or 4 people who are carrying it out. Do you sense that they've kind of moved, and it makes sense because it's an important department. Do you sense that they've moved in that way? Like, what,
Len,
can you pull back what his job title is?
I understand the question. I will only say this to you: he gets his hands dirty. He is very much involved in every aspect of his room. And whether or not he has a fancier title, and I'm sure that comes with a nice compensation package.
Sure.
I'm glad for him. But when I say he gets involved, he is not a pencil pusher. Believe you me, if you have ever met Aaron Wellman, you know he is not a pencil pusher.
Okay.
Yeah. And his
Good.
official title, just for the record, is Executive Director of Player Performance.
Sounds good.
See,
Nice
that's what
title.
led me to ask the question. It sounds like he's doing more of the overall planning and organizing, and there's some others. But Paul answered it. Okay,
He's in workout
great.
clothes every day, and I see him in that weight room.
Yeah,
Trust me.
I mean,
Right.
we've posted photos to Giants.com the last 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the off-season program with the guys in the gym,
Yeah.
in the weight room. I mean, and you can just see in the background of a decent amount of those
He's
photos,
there.
Aaron is there.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks for looking that up, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I know it's tough for you guys to talk about injuries and how far along people are in rehab. There's one that hasn't been mentioned. You know, we keep talking about Runyon like he's in good health. And as you know, when the season ended, this was a guy who was pretty banged up. Are you hearing anything? How is this guy progressing? Are we going to get surprised on that first day of training camp if someone comes out and says Runyon's on the PUP list? Can you speak to that, or is that a tough thing for you guys to talk about?
The only thing that I could tell you, Lan, is that no one has sounded any alarms on his name for me.
Okay.
Now, that does not necessarily mean that they won't pull him back some or that he's going to be delayed in terms of what he does on the field. That's
Right.
always possible for anybody who goes into the
right.
previous end of the offseason banged up.
Yeah.
That's possible. I'm not going to
Right.
tell you that he's going to be full go as soon as he gets here
Okay.
for
Okay.
the veteran
All right.
minicamp. I won't tell you
Okay.
that because I don't know that.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard any alarms.
Is he hanging around?
I'm sorry?
Is he hanging around the shop?
That's not something we can discuss.
Okay.
Guys
All right.
who
I
we
get it.
see in the building are not, that's not part of our conversation here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. Good.
I will
good.
say that I don't remember one mention of him from Joe or Dave's or anyone as like any
Okay.
sort of cause for concern by any means.
Right.
Like I feel like that's a situation where it's sort of no news is probably good news.
I will
yeah.
say this. I have busted Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach,
Right.
when I've seen him in the lunchroom, and I've busted horns with him. It's like, you got a lot of guys in your room. You're going to be able to
Ooh.
fit them in the door?
Yeah.
And he has laughed. He's like, I sure do have a lot of guys. So
Yeah, I think at my last count, I think there's 16 guys in there.
more the merrier, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's going to be fun, but of course, Runyon is, in the top third of that when you think about that. Who's in the room and so forth, and there's a lot of those guys are going to have to struggle to even make the practice squad. There's going to
Let
be some
it
guys
be
that
a
are gonna be let go.
competition, Len. Competition's good. Let it be a competition. The more guys who have to fight
but I
for
think
those
there are
jobs,
some
the
people,
better.
I mean, you rattled off the names today that are going to kind of rise to the top, and it's not going to be unless there are injuries. And there are some linemen out there. I think John talked about them yesterday. Guys like Scherf and so forth. If there is a
Willis,
problem with any of the top
Wills.
5 to 8 guys.
Yeah, but you know what, Len? What you really want to do is take stock of what you have in the building first.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think we're going to be okay at the offensive line. Andrew. I mean, we got to get Andrew for at least 15 games, Paul. We saw what happened last year. Without Thomas.
Well, I'll say
it's a tough go.
he definitely is the linchpin of the offensive line. I mean,
my
we've
goodness,
seen the last 2 years. Once he goes down, things can kind of crumble around him.
Yeah.
All I will say is that when Joe spoke to the media at the Combine, he said that Andrew had been working out at the facility leading into that week in Indianapolis, and Joe used the quote that he is looking humongous, which considering was already 6'5", 300 whatever, the fact that Joe said he's looking humongous, that makes me think that he's doing pretty well in his recovery from last year's injury.
If you can have just one Pro Bowler, all-pro player along that offensive line, and four guys who can maintain their business, so to speak, and do their business, geez, it's going to be a dramatic improvement. But you just, like you say, you used a great word. You need the one linchpin, who's kind of the star and can keep people off that quarterback and so forth. John and Lance did an interesting exercise on Monday, and Paulie, I think John got you into it yesterday, where they went through the, I think, 11 position groups.
Yeah.
And ranked top one through all the way back through 11. And, I remember, and I hope you guys are able to do this again this year. Well, you have in the last 3 or 4 years, where you've compared our position groups to the rest of the position groups in the division.
Yes.
And you did it division-wide. Because that's where we're really going to be, it's going to be telling as to how much closer we've gotten to to our division rivals. Again, 6 games, that's a lot of games. And as we know, you get to the playoffs out of the division. And so, we've got to start winning games in the division. So I'd be interested in that analysis. And I know you do it every year, and that'll be a fun exercise, to listen to again.
That'll come sometime
I like the draft.
over the summer.
I've said this before. I'm repeating myself here, but I like the draft. I think it's as good a draft as any team had. But the division had a pretty darn good draft too. So I don't know how much more better we got than our division rivals. But it's a terrific draft. I feel good about the trade. We just had to come out of this with a young quarterback, and we got one of the better ones. Arguably, maybe we got the second guy. So I was all for the trade, and I think all the way through 7, I think we got some promising folks. I mean, we're not gonna see Burke start, but I think he makes this team. And the tight end. He's going to be challenging for a spot, so I think we did. I think we did pretty well. The national press is not terribly excited with the way the roster looks. I'm still kind of thinking it through how we might compare with other teams in the NFL, but. Geez, you see rankings like 30 best roster, 31st best roster.
Don't read them,
I think
Len.
ESPN just came out with one. How does the
Len,
32nd roster?
Wait,
don't.
I'm glad you brought up that one specifically, because that came out, I think, earlier this week, either Monday or Tuesday. And ESPN had the Giants ranked dead last at number 32.
Yeah, dead last. Yeah.
And immediately after the ESPN account tweeted that out, Mike Clay, who was one of their top NFL analysts, and Jordan Renan, who's the Giants beat reporter, both quickly replied saying, this ranking is kind of ridiculous. We don't think the Giants are, the best team in the league, but they are certainly not number 32. So those are two ESPN analysts that immediately replied to the ESPN ranking saying, don't buy this.
Can we at least wait till the guys get to training camp, for God's sakes?
Not necessarily from within the organization, but from the beat writers or for some other people. I thought that was a little ridiculous. I'm not sure how you would figure this out at this point. Anyway,
the beat reporters tend to be a little bit harsher in general towards the Giants because they're here every day throughout the season. I've seen a lot of the beat reporters since free agency and especially after the draft say the Giants have gotten significantly better, and the national media has not quite caught up to that yet, and they will. It'll take a little bit of time, given how the last 2 years have gone. Can't blame people that aren't spending every day around this facility to just thinking, it's the same old Giants. But
it's wait and see mode. That's really what the national media is doing right now. Len, I got to run because we have one more caller on the line.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Well.
Thanks, Len.
I want to get Lucas in here. He wants to talk about the rookie class. You're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Hey, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Loving the show.
Thank you.
And I was loving the conversation about who's best value, who's your favorite. So I just wanted to chime in. I really love the 7th round pick, Corey Black. 6 foot guy, really fast,
physical,
team captain, physical. Just wow, I can't believe it. He has a very similar physical profile to the first round Deonte Banks that we had. So it's just really good to get some competition in the room. I'm loving the moves. And really, I think we're going to win a lot more games than people think. My uncle has season tickets, so we always do tailgating and, go to all the games. And for the last couple of years, with the O-line and the quarterback not making decisions, maybe it's because he was feeling a little shaky in the pocket or whatever. I don't think that's going to be a problem. We have Russ, who is, not what he once was, but he's super serviceable, great accuracy, good timing. He'll take the sack instead of turning the ball over. And then, worst case scenario, we got Jameis Winston, who can kind of throw some darts downtown. And then, if all else fails, you have a developmental quarterback. What else could we really ask for? There's really no hole. So I, just want to praise the team, praise the coverage. And, finally, there's a team worth more than $5 on the resale market, I feel.
Well, thank you, Lucas. Appreciate the phone call.
Thank you, Lucas.
One thing I do want to mention in terms of the quarterback, Russell Wilson, he'll be 37 by midseason. And if there's one thing that you'll notice sometimes when quarterbacks really start to head to the back nine, the loss of arm strength will be noticeable. You'll be able to see it. Sometimes it's because the guy's been hurt a lot. Sometimes it's just because, that rubber band at some point starts to give out. If you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, during the second half of that season when Russell Wilson was starting each and every week, his arm still has it. He still spins the ball extremely well. He still throws that 65-yard moonball bomb down the sideline with precision. There is, in my opinion, Russell Wilson, as he's gotten older, he's not quite as mobile as he was. His legs are a little bit slower than they used to be. But in terms of his arm, I have absolutely no doubt about his arm still being what it needs to be to perform at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking about George Pickens before and some of the success he had this past season in Pittsburgh. Well, he was on the receiving end of all those moonballs from Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. I mean, when Russell Wilson spoke to the media when he was being introduced as a member of the Giants, he talked about how he loves throwing those moonballs and, dropping it into a bucket. Like, he is one of the best quarterbacks still, I believe, in being able to drop a ball into 30, 40, 50 yards down the field and just drop it into a bucket. He's been
probably one of the top three for a long time.
I was going to say,
category.
He's been one of the best since he really became the starting quarterback in the NFL over a decade ago. He has been one of the best at doing that. And you're right. Obviously, with his age, no one's confusing him with a 25-year-old young buck at the quarterback position. But other than his age, like his arm, it doesn't look like it's been negatively impacted by his age really at all.
No, his arm still
has
looks
like the same. Will he run with the ball a little bit less than maybe he would have a decade ago? Sure. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. The Giants brought him in because of his accuracy, his precision passing, his leadership. And those are all, positive attributes that he's going to bring to the Giants offense and it's kind of been lacking a little bit since Eli Manning left. There's no shade towards Daniel Jones, but Russell Wilson is just a proven veteran leader and winner in the NFL who's been doing it for a very long time at a very high level. And the Giants just haven't had, a consistent quarterback like that in that QB room really since Eli retired, which was at this point, 6+ years ago. And then just one real quick other point that the caller made, I just wanted to quickly touch on Corey Black. He was the last pick for the Giants, one of the last picks in the entire draft. We spoke about this going into the draft. When you get to the 7th round, that's when you want, or 6th, 7th, late picks, that's when you start betting on traits. And he is a traits guy. I mean, he's 6 foot, like 200 pounds, runs a 4.3, 3-year starter, was a team captain, has special teams value. Like, this is someone that Joe, Shane, the front office, coaching staff, they were very high on him and being able to get him where they did in the 7th round. I mean, you look at his NFL draft combine, player profile on NFL.com, and they had him projected as a 5th round pick. And the Giants got him with one of the last picks in the draft. Now, I'm not saying this guy, you're going to expect him to come in week 1 and start, opposite Paulson Adebo at corner, but this is a guy that probably will contribute on special teams early on. And
there's no doubt about that.
And could easily, depending on how he plays and how he grows, could find his way onto the field. It wouldn't shock me if, they mix him in a little bit once we get into the season. Again, he's not going to be out there immediately, but this is a traits guy that has the potential to grow into a solid player. So I'm glad the caller brought it up because I feel like that is the one guy that we really have not discussed kind of at all, because I know Fedoni was a popular pick as like the value pick for the Giants, the sleeper pick. I feel like Corey Black hasn't really gotten too much love. So I'm glad the caller brought him up and, able to hype him up a little bit, because there's a lot to be excited about with,
and remember,
a 7th round pick there.
He's not just a traits guy who's coming from a lower level or a small school. He's coming out of Oklahoma State,
where he started for 3 years.
That's a big time program, in a big time conference.
And he played in a lot of different types of schemes, coverage schemes. So, he has experience under his belt.
He may truly be a sleeper as opposed to just some projection who you're throwing mud against the wall. At least according to Joe Shane, when John and I talked to him right after the draft, he's like, this guy can compete for defensive snaps. He's not just a special teams player.
For sure. And again, just like all these other rookies, he's going to need some time to grow and develop. But that goes for just about every rookie entering the NFL.
Real quick, before we go, did you have to do any postings today online that we should let people know about?
Today, I don't think we
there's
had
another photo gallery going up, right?
I don't believe we're getting
Tomorrow?
photos today.
Okay.
We'll definitely get photos from, rookie minicamp this weekend. We might get some more from the off-season program tomorrow. I don't think we're getting any today.
Okay.
I'm not sure about any upcoming huddles.
Draft season is coming out later today.
Draft season is later today. John, who's on the one today?
2026 mock draft?
Is the 2026 draft class.
That's all right. Tony, Pauline, and John.
Never too early to start scouting.
The 26th draft class. Yeah, I know. You folks are tired of hearing about the draft, but you're going to hear about more of it if you go to the huddle this day with the 26th draft class. All right, that'll do it for Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle. The New York Football Giants is always coming to you from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. From Outside Tech, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you again next time. Thanks, everybody.